District. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm getting the cue that we're going to go ahead and get started. We do have some people online joining and looking at our presentation. I'm glad to be with you. I'm Dr. EmilyBell. I'm the Chief Information Officer from Fulton County Schools in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And the presentation is named Leveraging Existing Platforms to Create Actionable Insights and Resources. But I will tell you as I go through the presentation, this will primarily be a story about Microsoft. It will be a story about Safari Montage, and it will be a story about One EdTech. Tim earlier had a presentation. He referenced it as IMS Global, and that name has changed to One EdTech. But this presentation will also talk about how we've incorporated data standards to leverage interoperability. I do want this to be interactive. The folks online can see you when you talk because we have a camera that will follow voice. So please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions as we go along. We're definitely better together. We learn from each other. And I think that's the benefit of us all being here together today. So this is a little bit about where Fulton County is located. They're in the heart of the metro Atlanta area. We are bisected by Atlanta Public Schools. And because of that, our district stretches 77 miles. So we have a geographic, literal challenge with 77 miles between the northernmost point and southern, in addition to just the diversity that we have in our district. Here are some facts about our district. We have about 90,000 students. We have about 14,000 teachers. We have over 100 buildings in our district. So we're rather large. I also added in there about our operating budget. As we all know, in government, we have to have full disclosure. And our finances are we're operating at right around $1.6 billion. So people think K-12 is small potatoes, but it is definitely not. So I like this. I want to start with this quote. I love John Maxwell as a leadership author. He had this quote: "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." That's what we're all doing here together. And here's my quote. And I think as ed tech leaders, we should all have our sort of mantras that we live by. And this is one of mine. Leaders should leverage existing platforms to achieve goals. So we have those district platforms. They can do a lot. Most of the time, we don't use those platforms to their full capacity. But this is something I really try to get leadership in our district to do. Make sure we can't already do it with what we have, because what we have, we know is secure. I really appreciate earlier you brought up student data privacy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. It's important. This is a visual of our digital ecosystem. This shows you just the district applications. Now we have an application menu for our teachers that has over 300 vetted application. Data security is at the top of that list. We ask that our vendors comply if it's an RFP or that we have a data privacy agreement that they must sign and not redact. That requires them to be One EdTech certified, not just compliant. And if they're not, we ask them to be on a roadmap. We ask that they comply with all our data privacy. And these are some of our resources district-wide. I didn't show the 300. These are district applications. Now, I've got a couple of these circled because I intend on talking about those in great detail today. We're going to talk about at the center our data warehouse, which right now is on-prem. We did some analysis of Azure. We actually have a tenant in Azure for our ERP or our business system. And we've done some investigation to migrate our data warehouse to an Azure data lake or other means. But right now we're still on-prem and we're doing well with that. You're going to see some really cool projects that we're working on. I'm going to talk about Microsoft 365 and our A5 license. I actually could be here all day talking about, earlier Chiz had a slide that talked about all the offerings with Microsoft. We either know about those or investigating those, or we're leveraging those in some meaningful way. But today I'm going to focus on 365. And then over to the right, you see I pulled out Teams. Teams is a part of 365, but I pulled it out in a specific section that talks about instructional applications. Because for us, Safari Montage, Canvas, Nearpod, and Teams do represent that learning management system in our district. But today I'm going to focus on Teams. I can address questions about Canvas, but today our focus is on Teams. I wanted to mention that we definitely have the A5 license in our district. So the things that I'll talk about today, you really can't do without the A5 license. I'll speak more to that in just a minute. However, Chiz, I'm going to say this about Microsoft licensing. It came up earlier in the room. We bought this license in 2018, and primarily it was purchased for security, for the Sentinel, Defender, those pieces, and for networking. But when I came to the district in 2018, I started leaning into it for the productivity and collaboration side of it. Back in 2020, when we were really making a decision to lean into Microsoft, Immersive Reader came out, Translator was out. It's just phenomenal what these tools would do, and we were already paying for it. But since then, just recently, we've gotten a bill for premium use of like Translator. So Microsoft is definitely changing their model, and I do believe that they listen to us. So this is just me saying to my fellow practitioners, if you see something, say something. We see this licensing changing. We need to lean in and say, this is not sustainable for K-12. Work with us as partners. I have seen them answer that call in a meaningful way, but we have to tell them. So I am advocating for the A5 license, however, still because of the many, many benefits it brings to the district. Now I'm going to talk about one of two of the most important work I've done in my career. These two projects have given me, it has really filled my soul, honestly. It's been so powerful. The first one is called the Balanced Scorecard, and I know that this slide is pretty text heavy, but I wanted to give you background on what a Balanced Scorecard is. This is actually a data report card, okay? It was first discussed by Harvard professors, Kaplan and Norton, and it was used in business, not K-12, business, to really keep an eye on P&L, profit and loss. But a couple of our board members saw it and they thought, hey, we do a good job with reporting on academic measures, but our district does so much more, 1.6 billion more. So it's good to track data on other areas of the business, including not just learning and growth, but finance, business processes, and stakeholder input. On the left side of the screen, you're seeing really a PDF version of an Excel worksheet. That was the balanced scorecard for 20 years in our district. We just collected the data from disparate sources. We created an Excel document. We submitted it to the board one time per year. And then the board had some targets they established and said, okay, we're doing well here, we're not doing well here. And for the rest of the year, we may track some of that work or we may not. Because when you see data just one time, it's really hard to inspect what you expect. You need to see that data moving. So on the right, you're seeing some of the changes we made to that Excel document, some of the measurements we started collecting so that we could modernize the balanced scorecard. So we took all of those objectives, goals, and metrics, and we put it in those 4 buckets that I alluded to earlier. And then we started leveraging Power BI. So in our data warehouse, we collect data from all these disparate sources. We structure it, we secure it. We use a tabular model to make it where we can actually use Power BI to visualize it. And we create these pages in Power BI. So on the left side of the screen, you're looking at a navigation menu of the various areas under those 4 buckets. On the right side of the screen, you're looking at 4 different visualizations for assessment. But we have over 400 visualizations in our balanced scorecard today. It's powerful, powerful data. This is an example of our college and career readiness. And it has 3 different visualizations on the screen. I want to draw your attention to the left side where you can see filters. Those drop downs allow for that data to be sliced by district, school, grade, and even some special criteria. Like at the bottom there, you see Services for Exceptional Children, or SEC. In each of our visualizations, we have these little icons. One is a camera and one is a clock. If our visualization has a clock on it, it means the data is updated every night. Powerful. We never delivered that to the board before. We gave them point-in-time data only once per year. With many of our visualizations, it is real time. But there are still data points that are just one time a year. And so for those, we represent that with a camera, point in time, a snapshot. We also have icons in the lower left of every page that gives the user help. The question mark allows them some Power BI help. Let me pause right here and make sure I emphasize it. If you have the A5 license, all of your end users can access Power BI. If you have the A3 license, you have a limited use of Power BI. So what I'm showing you today would not, it could be done on a small scale, but it would not be on a large scale accessible. The icon that has the I stands for information. We post business rules on all of our data set. I just can't tell you how important that is. If you tell your stakeholders that you're transparent, but you're not sharing the actual calculations, on how you derived that particular visual representation of data, then you're not really transparent. We show them the math. We show them, and we give them an email address that says, if you don't think this is right, email us, challenge us. We want to make sure it's right. And this one's my favorite. We have a little icon that says AZ, and this stands for the acronym dictionary, because only educators can really know all of these acronyms that we use. Earlier, I referred to SEC, Services for Exceptional Children. Different districts call that a different acronym, so it's important for us to share what these actual acronyms mean. This is a QR code. I welcome you guys in the room and those of you online to scan the QR so you have access to our public version of the balanced scorecard. Just that alone is amazing. We have an internal secured version that gets down to the student level detail, but we also have a public version. We've employed security rules like too few students. If you use the filters to the point that the data is only going to show a visualization of 10 or fewer students, it just doesn't show you anything. Security is very, very important to us. But I think that you guys would really, especially for the data nerds out there like me, you can really get lost in our balanced scorecard. It's been a very beneficial piece of our district. And recently, I should have added a slide, the Georgia School Board Association awarded our balanced scorecard project as one of the stellar and flagship projects in the state. So we're really proud of that. Okay. Now I'm going to shift to this second of the two most important projects I've worked on in my career. This one is the Parent-Teacher Curriculum Hub. So I think that most of us in the room can agree that access to standards aligned content for teachers is just a need. It's a need in every district. We want those teachers to have access to great content. So this was our journey to help make that happen. I'd like to show you another graphic representation of our object repository. Of course, Safari Montage is our learning object repository, as I mentioned earlier. But I especially want to point out to you guys the L&T videos. Do you see the blue arrow at the top? And it says L&T videos, and it points to Fulton 2. Okay, let me give you some background. This appeals to the media specialists in the room. The original reason that Fulton invested in Safari Montage was really for the media specialists who wanted to do school broadcasts, school news. It was a big thing pre-COVID. The cool thing too, it was a great way to have family engagement. So Fulton 2 is accessible and it's non-authenticated way for parents to be able to see the school broadcast. But as we were in the pandemic, there was no school broadcast. But we still did need teachers to have access to high quality content. Safari Montage did have that content, but because the original reason for buying Safari had more to do with media specialists than teachers, I'm just going to tell you that we had a knowledge gap in our district. They really weren't leveraging Safari Montage for teachers to access the content that was there. Look at all that content. Now, most of that content has to be authenticated. We have to have students log in. We have to have teachers log in to use our curated resources in Safari Montage, as I mentioned, but Fulton 2 did not. So we started talking about how do we leverage Safari Montage to solve this problem. The other thing that was going on in our district during COVID was our parents gave us very definitive feedback that they hated going to 1,000 different platforms. Hated it. And the superintendent, I was at the time over enterprise applications, kind of like a colleague that you guys have spoken to recently is now. He called me on a Saturday morning and said, okay, we've got some schools using Google Classroom, some schools using Schoology, some schools using Teams. What do you recommend? We need to go to one thing. And for a variety of reasons, I recommended that we lean into our Microsoft A5 license and we create Microsoft Teams as the standard. We got very good support from Microsoft along that journey. So I have to lift them up, even though I threw them under the bus earlier with licensing. Now I'm going to lift them up and say they did support our efforts to this standard. And I'm talking about this at the same time as I'm talking about Safari because there was an integration to Safari. There was integration capability because Microsoft was leaning into the One EdTech standards for interoperability. Safari leans into the standards for interoperability and all of those data standards like One Roster. So this was an important part of my recommendation to the superintendent. And guys, there's nothing more powerful than your superintendent making a top-down decision that this is what we're going to use for business and instruction. Zoom, bye-bye. Teams. Google Classroom, bye-bye. Teams. It really helped our IT division with support. We leaned into that. And as I mentioned, our Microsoft partners helped us along the way. And I feel like leveraging those existing platforms is what helped us be successful during the pandemic. So just another slide showing the Safari Montage and Teams integration here. You can both push content, sorry, went too fast, push content from Safari to Teams, and you can pull the other way around. So that's a really nice feature for teachers. But we're still looking at this hub. We know Safari's out there, but how can we make it even easier? So here's a timeline. In the spring of 2021, our teachers were teaching in person and online. Literally had a camera here and students there, just like I'm doing today. And it's not easy. I sometimes forget about you guys, and I don't mean to. I don't. If you have a question, raise your hand and Chris will tell me. But it's hard. But that was the reality back then. So our curriculum hub meant to allow parents to have access to curriculum resources because some of those kids were at home and the parents became sort of the facilitator of the classroom. Well, I can't have parents logging in to our platforms, or we didn't. I mean, you can, but you have all that licensing stuff to go through, and we needed to be agile. We needed to be quick with this. So we needed something that authentication was not required. We wanted all grades, all standards searchable. And again, the purpose of the teacher curriculum hub is that content in the teacher curriculum hub was a little more than what the parents would see. So what I'm saying here is, just like with our balanced scorecard, we have an internal and an external. The curriculum hub, we have an internal and an external curriculum hub. We engaged with Safari Montage to help us with this curriculum hub. So here's some of the rationale. Let me give you a little bit of background. in the state of Georgia, Henry County, which is a district right below Fulton, had released what they called Henry Connects. And it was basically an interface where teachers would go and find content and pull it in to their online platform. And I loved it. And we had curriculum people who saw it, who loved it. So we kind of wanted to steal what they were doing. What do you call that when you're politely plagiarizing other people's work? You know, that's what they're required.
Imitation is the best form of flattery.
There we go. There we go. So imitation, the best form of flattery. We wanted to do it, and we found out that Henry was working with a basically up and coming developer. He was programming and storing everything on AWS cloud, which is not unusual for our third-party vendors. It's not. But I did not have enough time to truly vet that. So again, I lean into what my mantra is. I want to lean into an existing platform that I know is secure. And at the time, Safari Montage was on-prem. We have since gone to the cloud, as Tim mentioned earlier, is a viable option. We're seeing a lot of speed increase and changes by going to the cloud. But at the time we were on-prem, so I knew it was secure. So we knew that Safari was an approved vendor. They were a responsive partner and they were available. That was a key piece, right? Because it was that time, it was really hard to get ed tech vendors because they were so busy, right? The Safari was available. We would leverage our current platform. The third one says Safari Montage would help us convert our standards to case. And you'll see there, I've alluded to Fulton Standards Mastery Framework. We have state standards, but Fulton has its own flavor of those standards. We prioritize some of those standards, and we needed not only for the standards to be converted to case, but our flavor to be converted. And the fourth one there says Safari integrates with Teams. We talked about that. And the fifth one is data standards would allow for analytics. And we'll talk about that. So this is the reason we partnered with Safari. So this is a Safari and Teams story, right? But that's not what the teachers saw necessarily. This is just a nice graphic that said, okay, this is the work. This is what we had to do. And this looks simple, doesn't it? It took us time. We had to really, really lean in to get this done in a timely fashion. Our parent portal go live was in fall of 2021, and our teacher portal was live in spring of 2022. So this work kind of was overlapping with the balanced scorecard. By the way, our public version of balanced scorecard went live in January of this year. I just like to talk about that because I want you all to know how busy we were during that pandemic thing that was going on. We did not sit on our hands by any means. So now you're about to see our curriculum hub. As I mentioned, this is a team story. This is a Safari Montage story. Does this look like Safari Montage? No. Totally different front end. But the back end is Safari Montage and the integration was Teams. But it was very simple and our curriculum leaders designed it. Like, you know, I don't know that I totally agreed with the colors. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I totally agreed with what they put and where. But Chris Rogers, who's in the room with us now, was our lead on this project, and he was really good at being diplomatic between IT and curriculum and navigating those waters, because earlier in Chris's presentation, we talked about getting believe in, not just buy-in, but believe in. And to get curriculum to have believe in, they need to have real stake in that game. This is their design. So I'm drilling down now into a specific area. This is, I believe English language. No, it's third grade advanced math. And you're starting to see how we're showing the scope and sequence. This is parent accessible. And here I'm showing a screenshot of the teacher portal, just a slight bit different with a little more detail there. So the curriculum hub, the public facing one, I put up a QR code for you guys to access. The content that is there is not licensed. And we put it on that Fulton tube place in our ecosystem so that it doesn't have to be authenticated. Now, we are still working on putting more and more content there because you guys know, for the most part, our content is licensed. Okay? So what we can share in this unlicensed and unauthenticated portal is not the full depth and breadth of the content in Fulton. But the point is, we have the backbone built. The backbone is built. We leverage the platforms we had. We leverage the standards that exist. So this is, I'm about to start talking about AI, so I had to get you to that point, okay? Because everybody's talking about AI. So I wanted to, why is this important? The first bullet says, you want to leverage your platforms and use interoperability. You want to make data and digital objects publicly accessible. By the way, in the state of Georgia, the legislature passed a law that says we have to do that. They have to make content and our libraries publicly known and accessible. The third bullet says both the balanced scorecard and the curriculum hub required collaboration. I think that's why I'm the most proud of it. This is not IT in a silo. Cannot do either one of these projects without the input and help from every division on the balanced scorecard and with curriculum on the curriculum hub. So proud of that, guys. I mean, you can beat yourselves to death trying to do it by yourself, trying to do a proof of concept and showing them. And they may not come around. You've done all that work in vain. It happens all the time. It's happened to me in my, see, I've been in education 30 years. I've been in ed tech for 25 years. So many times I've tried to lift up proof of concepts only to not have the believe in. So I'm really proud of the collaboration. The fourth bullet here is that the end results could yield data. And then here's the last bullet that gets you the AI hook. The balanced scorecard and the hub become foundational for the next steps in leveraging AI. So let me tell you what I mean by that. First of all, those are the two projects. Now I want to tell you some future work about what we're doing in AI, but do I have any questions so far? Anybody online? All right.
I have a question around the curriculum hub.
Yeah.
So I have it pulled up here and I know it looks like it mirrors the LLP interface with the unit structure and the standards and descriptions. I understand that we can make publicly accessible the digital resources that are in the collections. Let's say
If they're licensed, you can, right?
right. What I am wondering, did you happen to explore maybe seeing if it was possible to surface the titles, not make them viewable, but just maybe the title information or the description from the metadata with this.
That's a great idea. I think that you
Metadata would be copyrighted, title might be okay.
Title's okay. Yeah, we've had those discussions as far as development work for how to make a parent version of LLP and based on Georgia's law and a lot of the state laws, parents do have a right to see at least the titles of the materials And that doesn't violate licensing. Yeah, that's a great idea. Does Virginia have any state laws governing that, or is that just district policy?
Yeah, so Virginia started, I feel like they're trending that way.
Yes.
Particularly around with the new legislation around sexually explicit materials.
Mhm.
And we had to do a lot of work to develop parent-facing portal, which, you know, it sort of meets the requirement of the state law. But having something like this where we don't have to manually like duplicate all the work would be incredibly powerful. So I was even thinking like, if you just see the title.
Yeah.
If a parent were to request, hey, we'd like to
Then they
see
can
the title.
request.
Then they could come to the physical location.
Then
Yeah,
they
and watch it.
I think that's fantastic.
Right there.
What's that?
Our curriculum department has not asked us for that enhancement. I think that's fabulous
It's a great
idea.
So,
Yep, it would save them some time too. All right, anybody else? Questions on what we saw so far? Okay, I'm about to show you a slide that is very meaty again, has a lot on it. So before I go there, I want to talk with my hands because I couldn't talk without my hands. It's impossible. We're going to talk about a horizontal approach to AI. And then we're going to talk about a vertical approach to AI. And when I allude to a horizontal, what I'm saying is this is AI for everyone. AI that can advance an individual's productivity or efficiency is the horizontal approach. We have a team of people working on that, and they're going to create some policy. Then there is a vertical approach to AI. Vertical is for the organization. Vertical streams of AI that accelerate the organization. But in order to do it, you have to do some very specific things with data to get it ready. In Tim's presentation, he's had this slide for probably a decade. I know I've seen that smart object slide for many, many years, Tim, is that right?
Yep.
It's not unlike what you have to do to get your data AI ready and what I'll talk about in this presentation. Here's the horizontal and vertical approach. Again, I apologize for the meatiness of this slide. In horizontal, as I mentioned, you're doing it for individual progress. ChatGPT, some of those tools in that space. You can increase individual capacity. It's very tool-centric, and it's kind of comparable to implementing Microsoft Office. So some of you in this room are whizzes with Excel, and you can create a pivot table, and some of you cannot. That's kind of like those individual tools in the AI world. You may learn how to leverage them and do them well, or you may not. Vertical. Vertical is horizontal plus. It's not like ChatGPT or a tool won't be part of it. We're definitely looking at the Azure OpenAI as we explore these possibilities. We want this to be useful to the district, but it's not replicable in other districts. You will not be able to just get my playbook and do it just like that in your district to be able to leverage the AI. But we do think that leveraging these vertical streams will be a competitive advantage. Now, how does this affect our current work? So I am working with the Executive Director of Strategy and Governance in our district, and he and I did the balanced scorecard work together. And so as we're looking at the organization and the vertical work, learning and teaching has got to be at the top. That's our core business. Here's what we're saying is possible for the district. Here's what we want to tackle in these three towers. We want to engage learning. We want to personalize learning. We want to have data-driven instruction. We've said these things for years. We've tried to do it for years. But guys, the balanced scorecard work that we've done and all that data we've collected, secured, and structured, and the curriculum hub, which has content that is now case aligned, we're ready to really deliver on these 3 towers. We also think we can have organization efficiency. Just like all of you, I'm beginning to explore how we could launch a chat bot in our service desk for IT tickets. We're looking at how we can launch AI in human resources, feed it all of our job description and ask it to find duplicity and ask it to create new job descriptions based on additional criteria. There's all kinds of stuff we can do with organizational efficiency. But remember, as I mentioned earlier, this won't help you. I'm going to feed it with my job descriptions. And so that's why the vertical streams become something that we're all doing in very distinct ways. Across all of these streams, as we've mentioned in here today several times, we have to make sure the data is secured. We have to address policy. We have to address the technology. We have to address continuous training in this area. The quote at the bottom is a quote that I got from a Gartner keynote presentation in October. I don't know how many of you are Gartner members, but in Fulton, we definitely value the Gartner perspective as they are supposed to be unbiased. But I love this quote, and I'm going to read it because it's important. For data to be AI ready, it must meet 5 criteria. It is secure, enriched, fair, accurate, and governed. That is not unlike Tim's smart slide, is it? And what those objects are. Let's hone in on enriched. What does enriched really mean? Except tagged. And the media specialists, or those of you who have connections to that world, you know, everybody except for media specialists, they hate tagging content. Takes too long. Takes too long. Media specialists love it because they know how to curate content. You can't find it if it's not curated and tagged. That is going to be the key to really leveraging AI. All right. Let me give you a minute to look at this mess on my screen now. This looks like a big mess. So now what I'm about to talk about is a work stream of AI that is at our fingertips now because of all this data we have for the balanced scorecard. This isn't super sexy AI. You can do this in your organization if you feed it the data. This is a simple bubble plot that does a correlation analysis. I'm going to direct your attention to the 3rd row, first bubble. It's a very large dark blue. The color of the bubble represents the strength of the correlation. So the darker the color, the stronger the correlation. The size of the bubble represents the scale of the correlation. Now, I know you can't read those headers. Eventually, you will be able to read them because we're going to dump this data and visualize it using Power BI. But that particular bubble that I'm talking about is drawing a correlation between iReady scores and MAP. Yeah. So iReady, for those of you who do not know, math and reading, prescriptive diagnostic tool that we use across our district in elementary and somewhat in middle. And we spend a lot of money on it.
And you got attendance in there too.
Yeah, attendance.
I do have attendance and discipline. I hadn't gotten there yet. But
I took a picture so I could blow it up so I could see
perfect, perfect, yeah. This is showing a strong correlation between iReady and MAP, which is a nationally normed assessment that we use in the district. That's important because it shows you a return on investment statement.
Yeah.
We're not wasting our money here. We've got a strong correlation, but maybe we could say, why do we have to have both? I don't know. These are the interesting things that correlation analysis can do. Now, can Emily, the Chief Information Officer, make the decisions on what we correlate by herself? No, I can't do that by myself. I need for the superintendent, district leadership to tell us what's important to correlate. So on this plot, as mentioned in the room, we also show some attendance. You know, it's a no-brainer. If kids aren't in school, their scores are going to go down. But this is the actual math.
Yeah. So you're not making an assumption. You've got the important
Correct.
data to be able to show that there's evidence.
Evidence
And
that
that's
there's
what
a strong
everybody's looking
correlation.
for. They want that correlation between all of these points.
Yes.
And so it's not that we're
Yeah.
making assumptions.
So right now we're working with our district leadership on telling us what's important. So you're only seeing really a framework, but this is real data in our district, by the way. But it's just not being continuously fed. This data was captured in the spring, and we have not continued to feed the model because we're waiting to find out, what do you want us to correlate? I really should replace this slide with our latest iteration because we're getting closer to that picture. But I want to pause here and just say again, correlation analysis is an AI work stream. You do not have to boil the ocean. And when we go to conferences these days and we talk to tech vendors these days, they want to use this AI word as if it's an easy button, and it's not, but it's not that difficult either, depending on the work stream you're lifting up. All right, I'm going to show you another one. I love this one even more. This was in the area of predictive analytics. This is a lot to look at too. In this particular predictive analytics, and we could try to predict lots of things. Like the superintendent said yesterday, I want a prediction on our graduation rate. We can do that. Like, I'm going to be so proud to bring that on Monday because it's there at our fingertips. This one is about a standard.
For the prediction, what do you get correlation like over 10 years or?
Again, this model was fed with the spring testing data.
Data, yeah.
Okay, so just that. If we had 10 years of data, and we can, not 10 years, but I think we can go back as far as 5 for sure. But here's what, this is the framework here. We're looking at one standard. There is a slicer here at the very top. You see it's on developing right now.
Exactly.
I could change that to proficient. Okay. I don't even know why we did a screenshot on developing. We don't want our kids to just develop. We want them to be proficient. But anyway, if we left it on developing, what this prediction model is saying is that if students master this one standard, then they are 3.47, is that right, Chris?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Times more likely to pass or be developing in this area. To emphasize and to prioritize the standard gives the student a 3.47 times greater chance.
I'll take it.
It's powerful. It's powerful. All right. So again, this is another work stream of AI. Not super sexy, but super effective.
Something similar to this.
Yeah. And honestly,
We're big on Power BI.
some of our
I
platforms
hear-
do this.
I hear you preaching and I'm with you.
I love preaching to the choir. It's my favorite. Because they all always agree with me. Yeah, I don't have any dissension in my choir. It's perfect. So we talked about 2 work streams in AI. I'm going to show you a model for the last one. And this is where we're going to leverage the power of our curriculum hub and what we've already done with it and Microsoft's potential with the Open Azure AI. Again, a lot on this slide, but we're showing a model that taking that content that is tagged, right? Taking that content that we've aligned to a One Ed Tech standard case, and then working with powerful generative AI, we could create a recommendation engine that basically allows the students to see, okay, you were successful with this piece of content in this standard. Here's some other content that learners like you were successful with. We just have a model and a framework for this. This is kind of the reason I came today, because we are ready to take the next steps with Microsoft Azure AI, working in collaboration with Safari Montage. I am ready to do something very meaningful for teachers and students. If you noticed, the Curriculum Hub and the Balanced Scorecard, they are very much leader-centric, teacher-centric. I'm ready to do something powerful for the students, and these 2 projects I've alluded to today have gotten us to that point. This is my last slide. I know you're glad. I think I'm right at time. When the Executive Director of Strategy and Governance and I presented this, we wanted to say, okay, who's going to be involved in this? Because obviously we can't do it by ourselves. And we lifted up learning and teaching and instructional technology. They're doing that horizontal approach. They have an AI coalition. They have like 50 staff members from across the district talking about AI. How should students use it? How should teachers use it for that horizontal approach? Professional learning is also going to be involved. But for the organization efficiency and the frameworks and security, obviously that's going to be strong IT and some of our other divisions. And in our district, we have a data and analytics committee. And it has representation from all of our various departments. And our leaders in that will help us decide what's the right work. Because if they're not at the table, nobody will use it. And I don't want to work on anything anymore that I'm not sure we have believe in. But that's my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
I've got a question.
Okay.
So
Must be very important.
I like it.
Yeah,
This
so in our district, we have an app called Crisis Go.
Try being in a room when everybody's goes off in Fulton County, which I
And that particular alert can't be silenced. I have my phone on silence. It's going to come through no matter what. And it means we have an active shooter.
oh,
Now, we wear lanyards around our necks and the button is on that lanyard. So that said, it gets accidentally pushed and
Rubbed against something too hard.
yeah.
held
And
on.
so our protocol is we wait about 2 minutes to see if this is a false alarm at that location. And if it's not, then we have a protocol for what we do next. But it's a very good tool. But, you know, we've had some alarms go off when somebody's child was playing in mom's purse
God bless.
found the button and starts clicking it a lot, but,
Yes,
okay. So I digress a lot.
yeah.
I felt like you all deserved an explanation. So Chris, you had a question.
So you talked about the two projects that were meaningful to you, and you said that neither one would have been possible without strong collaboration between IT and curriculum, strong collaboration across your district. One thing I have noticed is some school districts have a strong culture of collaboration, I'll call it. Others, not as much. What are some keys to you as a leader in a district to help build that culture of collaboration? What helps you to get those projects done?
I believe that, yeah, you have to have people in leadership who can talk the same language. I am able to talk about some of our IT projects and get them off the ground because even though it was 25 years ago, I was in the classroom. I've actually been in every grade level. I'm certified in every grade level. I just came out of the classroom within 5 years and went into technology leadership very, very quickly in my career, back when we still had dial-up. I hate to age
Wow,
myself.
yeah.
Basically, I've been in it that long, but I speak their language. And I know what it means to be a classroom teacher and what they really need to have. And I think that's important. The reverse is also true. So the Curriculum Hub project in particular, we had a leader who has now gone on to be a superintendent, but she was a curriculum leader and she got it. And she wanted to get it and she got it really early on. Well, let me tell you the use case that got curriculum to the table. Earlier, I referred to the MAP assessment. Do you guys remember the ITBS? Did y'all give ITBS? And there was a huge failure. Remember the year it crashed and
We didn't use it, but I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
okay, there was a big crash. And so our district's like, we're getting off of this. And our board was specifically interested in the MAP nationally normed assessment. They said,
Yeah.
you're doing this. And unlike other applications that go through our vetting process, the board said, do this. So we start working on it. But the MAP assessment, that platform was not One Ed Tech certified. And it took us weeks to get to the point where we're ready to look at that and do some demos with teachers and assessment. And curriculum says to me in a cabinet meeting, in a chief's meeting, why is this taking you guys so long? Because they're not One Ed Tech certified. And because they don't follow those data standards, it interrupts the efficiency and speed to which we can deliver our solutions to the classroom. They got it and they started putting it in their RFPs and they started speaking that language. And I know I'm a little biased. I'm on the board of directors for One Ed Tech, but I'm on the board of directors because I believe in it. I believe in it because I've seen it work. I believe in it not because it creates equity, as Chicago Public Schools really lifts up, but speed and efficiency. I don't want to buy a tool today and not be able to use it until the end of the semester. I buy a tool today and use it within 3 days.
Data compliance and data integrity is our number. We can't hardly bring on anything without running the roads.
Right.
And it never is. Everybody has this great idea, there's an innovation. I say, well, let's get on it, let's get started. So first of all, we're not experimenting with children. Let's get that idea.
Yeah.
Not experimenting with children is
And
a
then,
good idea.
if there's evidence that says that this works and you can
Yeah.
demonstrate that, great.
Yeah.
Then, let's see how it's gonna fit within our infrastructure. You're living it.
Yes.
I so admire what you're talking about and applaud you in your effort.
Thank you so much. I'm really proud of these projects. I'm really proud of our next steps
They look really good.
with AI. Thank you so much. We have an amazing team. I got chill bumps. So, any other questions, comments? What can we do to partner?
This is a comment, not really a question, but one of the most powerful things about your presentation is when people hear presentations about ed tech, they're typically hearing about something new and how somebody's doing something, and you should do this because this is new in your district. If you really think about what the theme of Emily's presentation is, it's not about doing something new.
Correct.
It's about leaning into what you have and looking at what you have and how you can leverage what you already have to have more powerful outcomes on student achievement, on business practices, and all of that. And I think that's worth repeating because it's a message that's not heard very often.
Well,
Yes,
and secondly, it's being done. It's not.
right. We're not just
you're
talking
going-
about it.
We're not talking, these are
Right.
real applications.
They're
And I
real.
think that's, a lot of times we hear what's gonna happen, but this is what's happening, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank everybody remotely too.
Yes, thank you, remote. Oh, and this belongs to somebody, right?
Yes, it's Patrick's.